we need to talk. We need to talk about my connection with pain, my connection with focus, and my connection with breath, and how these connections and my complete nervous system breathing reset help me heal to where I am today. And we're talking about this because I got two questions from one of my listeners, and she made me realize that the more questions arise, the more I need to turn inwards and find things that I haven't shared before. And it is time for me to share them with you and share them with myself, because I had to figure out a lot of stuff. Because I have to go back to moments where everything was wrong with my brain, with my body, because these moments will actually give me the answers to how I connected with them at that point of time that helped me to become whole again and heal myself. So here are the two questions she asked me and why we're here now. How did I handle my pain, and how do I use breath work to reduce or relieve this pain? That's question one. And how do I keep focus, especially with the stimuli and sensory overloads during my days? What hit me the most is when I read this, is it's two questions, right? It is questions, different questions about different problems. It's pain. It is about breath work. It's about stimuli. It's about focus. It's about sensory overloads. So what I figured out is they all have the same solution. So it's different questions with the same solution. And I didn't know about this until I dove into it, tried to explain the questions. See, when I first started researching my TBI, because let us be honest with each other, you have to become your own doctor and healer and neurologist and psychologist if you want to know what's really going on inside of you. Doctors don't have all the answers, not yet at least. And one thing I asked myself was, what is exactly happening inside of me that is causing all this chaos and all the pain? And of course, the answer is I have left temporal brain damage, and it comes with emotional regulation problems, with has the extra sensory processing issues, and of course, my memory formatting difficulties. And I know I have the relentless 24-hour pain shooting through my neck and through my head and my shoulder and my back and sometimes my eyes. And I thought these were all separate problems that needed separate solutions. It sounds like they're all separate problems that need separate solutions, right? But I was wrong. I was oh so wrong. I know I'm a complex traumatic brain injury survivor, and that makes me to have to become a researcher, a fighter, and a rebuilder to become me, to be where I am now, because the alternative, the other choice of not doing anything and just let anybody else do it, is not an option to me. So today's episode is about my discovering that all my pains, all my inability to focus, and my emotional regulation crashes aren't separate issues at all. They're all connected. They're all the symptoms of the same damaged system, my TBI, and all the things going on in my brain and my body. And I'm going to share with you not just the breakthroughs, but I'm going to share with you the exact techniques that rewired my body and my brain. And hopefully, cross my fingers, hopefully it will help you to rewire some of yours. So let me tell you about, how do I say this? The research rabbit hole that would change my life. I'm sitting probably here at another table, but at my computer, I think 20 months in after my accident. I'm still trying to understand why my brain felt like it was glitching and reshooting and doing all these stupid things constantly to make my day worse every day. And the doctors, they had given me diagnosis and medication and referrals to other specialists and other doctors who gave me different diagnoses, new medication, and more referrals, and on and on and on the wheel went. And still nobody was explaining me or giving me answers to everything that felt so disconnected and still was so connected all at once. Let me tell you what I mean with this and try to understand, why did bright lights not only make my eyes hurt from the inside out, but also make my neck pain so much worse? And why did loud noises not just trigger my brain to overload with thought triggers, but also overload my emotional regulation problems and meltdowns? And the third thing is why. Why couldn't I focus? Not focus at all when my shoulder or my neck were screaming of pain so loud. So when I started noticing these things, I also started researching and digging deeper into the so-called rabbit hole. Left temporal lobe injuries, right? That is, as you can hear sometimes, it's where language processing happens. And sometimes I slur my words. It's one of those things where emotional regulation lives. I'm still happy, so there's no problem there at the moment. And where my brain filters all the sensory information. So when that got damaged, and that, for me, that came with that ripple effect that I mentioned in the previous podcast, because it's not just the one thing that breaks. It is that computer virus that corrupts multiple programs all at once, and that affects everything in the computer. So what I found is that no, what I found is what everything changed. What changed everything? The other way around. It's what everything changed. What changed everything? When having a TBI like I do, especially with that damaged areas like the left temporal side, something really specific happened for me. And it's about communication. My communication between my brain hemispheres got disrupted or broken, or disrupted, I think that's the right word. Think of it like left brain, right brain working together like the perfect synchronized swimming team. Like, synchronized swimming, they all do the same thing all at once. But after my TBI, one was swimming on house music and one was swimming on jazz music. So one side became hyperactive while the other side became not active or underactive or lazy, as you might call it. And this created those chaotic mind fluctuations, the fluctuations of the mind. And it felt like my thoughts were like pulled in 50 different directions. And they were speaking a language I didn't understand. So my thoughts I didn't understand, they were pulled in different directions. It was my brain literally firing chaotically instead of working together in organized patterns. So the pain that I felt wasn't also just physical. It was also my nervous system that was stuck in a permanent alarm mode because my brain couldn't distinguish between actual threats and normal sensory input. So when I hear a car horn outside, it isn't just a sound. It's an extra sound on me typing, the cat meowing, the music playing in the background, the washing machine washing, somebody using a hair blower blowing hair. I hear all these sounds all combined, all together, all at once. So there's no filter. So that car horn gets processed as an emergency sound that requires my entire nervous system to respond in a aggressive panic mode. And that's why I couldn't focus then. And that's why I sometimes still have to fight my focus today. And I'll explain later on how I work with that focus. My brain wasn't spending all its energy on relaxing, but it was treating everything like a crisis instead of filtering out what didn't matter. So that's why I also, couldn't regulate my emotions and they were all over the place because my brain couldn't even regulate my sensory input. So I figured out it also couldn't regulate my emotional processing, right? Um, and then the physical pain, that wasn't just physical pain. It was my nervous system's way of speaking and saying to me, I can't handle all this information all at once, Patrick. So I'm going to keep firing all these pain signals until you pay attention to me too. And that really blew my mind. And researching more on this, I found that some people, a lot of people with left temporal lobe damage often experience a thing called interconnecting symptom clusters. Interconnection symptom clusters. It is all the pain amplifying the focus problems. And the focus problems increase the emotional dysregulation. And the emotional dysregulation makes the pain worse. So I mentioned three things, and it looks and it maybe feels like three separate problems, but they're not. It is one broken system manifesting in three reactions. It is one broken system reacting and manifesting in three different reactions. That realization, that changed everything for me. If they were connected problems, maybe there were also connected solutions. Fasting forward a little bit to Rishikesh, India, and yeah, it's another moment of healing in India. It taught me a lot. This time I was laying in my bed after a long day of yoga healing, trying to rest and not to wake my roommate that was sleeping on the other side of the room, also knocked out from the day. And I was trying to keep my crying as quiet as possible because I was having one of those, those nights where everything was hurt. That hurt even more at that point of time, and nothing made sense, at least not yet. And I'm telling you this because I feel like this time was different. Because earlier that day, my yoga teacher mentioned something about breathing techniques and helping the nervous system to regulate again. I think she said something like that. So not the fluffy, just breathe in and out and everything will be fine stuff, but actual neurological reset techniques is what she said. So my first reaction was, I think the same as always, fight and flight. So will this thing make it worse for me? Or is this another BS breathing exercise again? It's the fighting, right? Because I had at that point in time, a traumatic brain injury. I had chronic pains. I was not sleeping in my bed, right? And sensory processing disorder. So there's a lot of questions going on in my head. And taking deep breaths, I thought wasn't going to rewire my damaged brain. But yoga was my last resort. It was my last way of healing. And I came there to heal. So I figured out that sometimes something out of desperation can also lead to breakthroughs. I wasn't there for nothing. So the next day, she taught us more about a 1-4-2 breathing technique. It is breathe in for whatever feels comfortable and hold that 4 to 4 times, that first amount, then exhale for twice the first inhale amount. So if you breathe in for 4 seconds or 4 count, you pause for 16 seconds, 4 times 4, and you exhale for 8, 4 times 2. So here's what she didn't explain, and I wish somebody would explain that to me like 2 years earlier, or I would have met her 2 years earlier. When you make your exhale longer than your inhale and add that extended hold, you could literally hack your autonomic nervous system. Could. So when you're focusing your overactive damaged brain to switch from fight or flight mode to rest and digest mode, the first time I tried it, and it was that night, or the night after, I think, something tiny shifted. It's not that the pain was gone, because the pain is real and it was still there, but the volume to everything else around me and inside of me got turned down a notch. And I kept going. And I did it for 4. Then I paused for 16 and out for 8, and over again. And then something incredible happened. For the first time since my accident, I could focus on just not one, 2 things: my breath and the counting, without my brain trying to process 17 other different inputs all at the same time. So my scattered thoughts weren't that scattered anymore. They were following the rhythm of my breathing and the inner voice saying, breathe in, pause, and breathe out. And the pain in my neck and in my shoulders was still there, and it still is. But I wasn't fighting it anymore. I was breathing through it. Breathe into the pain, pause, focus on the pausing of my breath, and breathing out, and all the time counting 4, 5, and somehow focusing on those things made it more manageable. Most importantly, I wasn't having emotional meltdowns like the day before, and my pain and disability to sleep wasn't there anymore. My nervous system was actually noticeable, calming down for the first time in years. And that's where, it clicked. I hadn't just found a breathing technique. I had found one tool that addresses all 3 problems all at once. And that tool was breath. It was that easy. And this was just the beginning of my breathwork journey and connecting those dots that, this listener asked me. So I'll try and explain how I use these techniques and what kind of techniques came after the 142. So after the breakthrough of 142, I became focused on understanding how breath could possibly rewire my damaged brain and make my pain less. So I asked her about, ancient techniques that had real neuroscience backing, because I didn't want to just do something. And that's where I discovered 2 more specific practices from pranayama, and that became my absolute game changer for me and my recovery and my life now. I'll share them. So let me share this with you, because these aren't just breathing exercises for me. They are my neurological medicine. So I shared the 142. Let me share the second technique. And I call it the modified Nadi Shodhana. Shodhana. I call it brain balance breathing because Shodhana is a little difficult. So here is what I'm going to do. And I want you to understand why this is so powerful for not just people with traumatic brain injury. They're just really important. Find a comfortable position sitting. If you have problems with your neck, please lay down, or you have back pains, please lay down. Make yourself so comfortable as you can. So we're not going to try to be yoga masters here. We're not going to try to be pranayama masters here. We're just going to try to heal. So take your right finger of your right hand and get the thumb and gently close the right nostril. Now, I'll show it first. I'll tell you first and then show it. Now, breathe in slowly for about 4 seconds to the left nostril. Don't stress about, the exact timing, just slow and steady. So here's where it gets interesting. Close your nostril. So with your ring finger, you close the nostril and hold your breath for an 8 count. So you breathe in for 4, you hold it for a count of 8, and then release the thumb, the right thumb, and exhale through your right nostril for a 6 count. Then reverse it. So you breathe in through the right nostril for 4, you close the nostril again, then you hold for 8, and then you release it with the right finger, and you exhale through the left nostril. So let me demonstrate. Let me show you. Oh, I'll keep the glasses off, I think. So right thumb on the nostril. I always place my fingers here. Then breathe in for 4. Close it, pause. Out for 6. In for 4. Pause for 8. Out for 6. That is one complete round. So exercise and work up to about 10 rounds or 15 rounds. My advice is to start with just 2 or 4 because you're new to this. So don't try to overwork it. Why is this so important and revolutionary? Because each nostril is connected to the opposite brain hemisphere. So the right nostril to the left side, the left to the other side. And they're connected through the nervous system pathways. So remember how I talked about my brain hemispheres being out of sync after my injury? When doing this technique, it literally forced them to work in coordination again. So for me, I was creating a rhythmic neural firing that stabilizes those erratic brainwave patterns caused by my injury. So the specific 4-8-6 ratio activated my parasympathetic nervous system without overwhelming that damaged area that was unable to process anything. So where the brain hemispheres are working together instead of fighting together, it reduces the amplification of the pain signals that happens in the brain that is overstimulated and in full chaos mode. So training my brain to focus on one coordinated task instead of the scattering in my multiple direction thing, that helped me so much in so many different ways because I could stop the fluctuations of the mind a little bit. The other technique, the third technique, is called a Bhramari or a modified Bhramari, and I call it the ultimate nervous system reset. This one might feel more unusual and it especially looks unusual, but the neurological impact, I'm getting sweaty of it, is incredible. So again, get comfortable. You can do it laying down. For me, I'm sitting and that works for me. So how are we going to use the fingers now to create a sensory cocoon? So what we do, we place our thumbs gently in our ears. I'm going to do it without, otherwise I hear myself talking. Place the thumbs gently in your ears, not too deep, but you want to muffle the sound a little bit. So what you do, you place your index fingers slightly or lightly above your eyebrows. Your middle fingers you place gently on your eyelids while your eyes are closed. Your ring fingers are at the base of your nose, not closing the nostrils, but at the base, you're feeling the nostrils, and your pinkies are right around here or here, depending on how long pinkies you are. So what you do is you take a, I'll show it, I'll show it in a minute. You take a deep breath in, and then you do that through the nose. And as you exhale, you make a steady humming sound like a bee. So, even without the fingers, I feel the vibrations in my skull and my chest. So let me demonstrate. Thumbs, fingers, eyes, nostrils, fingers. Breathe in. Let me come back to you again. So you can do it multiple times. I would continue this for a 5 to 10 breath count. So if you can do that, you can do that 10 times. Then try to repeat that cycle 2 or 3 times. For me, what really happens is that I had to remember that how my damaged brain got stuck in hypervigilant mode, and that these vibrations from the humming created what scientists call a vagal toning. So I was directly stimulating the vagus nerve, which is my body's primary, how would I say it, calm down mechanism. So the humming vibration literally massages my brain tissue, reducing inflammation and calming my overactive, how do I say it, neural firing that going on in my brain. So this specific frequency that you make around 100 to 200 hertz increases the nitric oxide production, which reduces your brain or my brain's inflammation. Difficult words. So the stimulation of the vagus nerve directly bypassed some of those damaged areas. Plus it releases tension, or at least it did for me, in those cranial muscles that contributed to chronic pain, like my neck and my shoulder and all the tightness around my skull. And maybe you, as a TBI survivor, know this feeling like I just described, the tightness in the head and around the eyes and the back and the neck. So they become my daily operation system, all these 3 breathing techniques. So I'll now show and answer the specific question you asked. So because it was a lot of technical techniques that I tried to explain. So let me tell you what I do, because just knowing the techniques is one thing, but applying them throughout a day is like, life-changing. It really changes everything. So first, let's talk about handling my pain through my breath work. So when I wake up every morning, I do what I call a system assessment. And it's not like a mood check or a pain check. It's just the full system assessment. I start with 5 minutes of the modified Nadi Shodhana. So that's the brain balance breathing, while I try to be as honest as I can, honestly evaluate what my brain can handle that day. And that's a split second. It's like a moment, like for 5 minutes, I try to feel that. Is my pain at the level that I can focus on a normal way? Or do I need to manage my pain for the whole day before attempting any cognitive tasks? Do I stay home or do I go out? Are my sensory processing abilities online or are they still offline? Or am I going to need like a modified environment today? Like again, stay home or go out? And how is my emotional regulation doing? Is it stable enough? Or do I have the tendency to cry already for nothing? Can I have social interactions that day? Or do I need to protect my energy? Stay home, go out. So yesterday, the day before I'm doing this, I woke up with pain and my pain was about an 8 out of 10. So the old me, and I explained this before, would try to push through and do everything my schedule said anyway. But I've learned that when the pain is so high that everything else becomes harder. And my strategy, my new strategy approach for my pain throughout the day is different. I manage it now. So I have different protocols or, reasons why I do stuff. So my morning pain protocol, if I wake up with significant pain like I did, I immediately go to the Bhramari humming technique. I do it around 10 times. I repeat it for 2 to 3 cycles before I even get out of bed. So the vagal nerve, I think, stimulation literally turns down the volume of the pain signals before they have the chance to spiral and become the 9 out of 10. So I keep it at 8. And then there's my midday pain flare. So if I do go out with a 7 or an 8, I have to figure out my early warning system. And for some of you, this might sound familiar. Mine starts with the squinting of my eyes. And then my brain, is trying to, how do you say it? Stop the visual stimuli because I'm at max capacity. So I start squinting my eyes. Then I get the 1,000-yard stare, like staring into nothing, and all my processing stops. Then the pain wave hits, and usually it starts at my neck, shooting through my head. So the moment I recognize that that sequence is starting, squinting of the eyes, I have to stop whatever I'm doing. I don't finish, even if it's a conversation, I don't finish. I taught myself not to push through anymore. Oh, just give it a minute, just give it 5 minutes. No, I stop. I find a quiet space. So it can be a bathroom, it can be my car, it can be an empty room somewhere. And then I immediately stop the 1-4-2 breathing. So in, hold for 4, out for 2. So the 4 count in, pause for 16, 8 count out, and this calms my nervous system enough so I can then choose my next step or my next action or my next breathing technique. So if the pain is still there and it's still building, so if it goes from an 8 to almost a 9, I switch to the Bhramari. And that immediately resets my vagal system or vagal nerves. And if the pain is stabilizing, I use that alternative nostril breathing to keep my brain balanced. So nowadays, after 10 years, the 1-4-2 breathing works almost always good enough to get me home because I can do it in the car or walking. I have evening pain management too. So before I go to sleep, before I go to bed, I always do the Bhramari, and it regulates, everything. I do it whatever my pain is. I feel that it resets my nervous system for a healing journey during my sleep. So now let's address the focus and sensory overload questions, because these were the pain questions. This is where the 3 technique system becomes crucial for my daily functioning, because we're just talking about pain. So like I shared, I do my morning focus setup. It is the pain, but it's also the daily start with the breathing balance brain thing. So the alternating nostril technique. So this is literally coordinating my brain's hemisphere before I encounter any stimuli during the day and the daily demands that I have. So it's like um, tuning your violin before you get called for that classical concert. So I also have the maintaining focus during stimuli. So if there is stimuli, I have to maintain focus. And what I learned about the sensory overload is that it builds gradually. It's that compound effect. So, and when it compounds, it will hit like a tsunami when it's full. So the key for me is catching it early, squinting of the eyes, etc. When I'm in environments that have multiple stimuli, like a grocery store or a social gathering, I use what I call a micro reset. What I do is every 15 to 20 minutes, I do like a round of 5 of my 1-4-2 breathing, just enough to keep my nervous system from getting into its overwhelmed status. So I can do that, but nobody notices. And if I'm somewhere that I need other techniques, but I can't do the obvious things with the hands, I do a silent Bhramari. It's the humming, right? The humming vibration. And I can feel it in my chest without the hand positioning. So I just, nobody notices it. And if you're somewhere you can walk, you can do it. But my vagus nerve gets the tiny and slightest reset it needs. So then there's a focus reset and recovery protocol. So when my focus completely scatters all over the place and I can't sit still and it just goes off, and it does sometimes and it does consistently, I have to do a specific sequence. First, I have to acknowledge that my brain is overwhelmed and I have to not fight it, because if I fight it, I get frustrated. Then I do a 5 round of the alternating nostril thing, the breathing through the one nose hold and all that to rebalance my hemispheres. So I have to balance them. If I'm still scattered all over the place, I do a cycle of 3 of the Bhramari to fully try and reset my nervous system. Then I return to my task with a single point focus only. I cannot focus on multiple things, it's one focus. Then there's the workplace focus. I completely restructured how I approach cognitive tasks. For one, I work from home, or I'm in a safe place where I know people, where it's not too busy, which I do a 30-minute focus block. So I work for 30 with a 5-minute breathing pause or break. So every 30 minutes, I pause for 5 minutes. During those breaks, I choose my technique based on what my brain needs. So if I'm getting mentally fatigued, it's the alternating nostril breathing to rebalance. If my stimuli are building up and they're overloading, I do a 1-4-2 breathing, and that regulates my nervous system. So I come back to relaxing. And if I'm getting emotionally overwhelmed, it's the Bhramari for immediate calming. And you can do that in the bathroom if you want to, if you're scared for people to see you. Find a quiet spot. And then there's, of course, the social situation management, because you have to do social things. Even with a TBI, it's good. And this, I think it might be the most important application, because social interactions are incredibly draining for me as a traumatic brain survivor, injury survivor, because I'm now also processing facial expressions, tones of voices, background noises, and conversation content. And I do it all at once because I hear them, I see them, everything comes in, no filter, remember? Before I get to social situations, I always do a 5-minute alternating nostril breathing technique to prepare my brain for the, how do you call it, complex processing. So during long social interactions, I always excuse myself after 30 to 45 minutes for my bathroom break. Always, just figure it out, the people that know me. And I do a quick Bhramari reset. It's the humming. And it helps. It always helps. And after the social situations, I always, when I cycle home or walk home or drive home, I always do the 1-4-2 breathing. And that decompresses my nervous system. I get relaxed again. And here's what happens if I do this consistently. My pain doesn't disappear, but it becomes something I can work with and not work against. And that for me is a breakthrough. My sensory overloads, they don't stop. Then again, I'm not drowning in them anymore. So that is a good thing too. But most importantly, my focus, I'm talking for 40 minutes, 30 minutes, comes back enough that it can actually function instead of survive, even if it's hard. And the hardest part was accepting that my capabilities and my capacity is different now. And it's okay, because different doesn't mean less than. Remember that one. It means, for me, more intentional. So these techniques gave me back my agency and my ability to influence my own experience instead of being completely at the mercy of my damaged brain or my pain. I'm not at nobody's mercy anymore. Why didn't I know this before? That the science behind why the techniques are so powerful and why understanding why makes the how so much more effective. Because all three techniques work by creating a controlled neurological input that teaches my brain and maybe your damaged brain new patterns. It bypasses that collapsed bridge. So instead of chaotic, reactive firing, you're training to coordinate intentional neural activity. It is neuroplasticity in action. Your brain is literally rewiring itself through controlled practices. The brain balanced breathing, remember, the brain balanced breathing, it addresses the, how do you call it, electrical imbalance between the hemispheres, while the Bhramari technique targets the chemical dysregulations of your nervous system. It's a lot of words. My damaged temporal lobe created chronic inflammation in my brain's tissue and dysregulation in my autonomic nervous system. It's a lot of different words for me, and I'm almost at my ends. So when I use these techniques constantly, I'm trying to reduce my brain's inflammation to increased nitric oxide production. Yeah, I have to stop in a minute. So creating coherent brainwave patterns that promote my healing, training my hemispheres to communicate effectively again, resetting my nervous system from the chronic fight to flight to rest and digest mode. It is my brain becoming the bridge between my conscious control and my unconscious healing process. Yeah, that makes sense. So here are the critical points for my TBI recovery. That's mine, my recovery. I started slowly. My injured brain felt overwhelmed immediately. My consistency beat intensity every time. For me, 5 minutes daily was way more valuable than 30 minutes once a week. So for anyone who is interested and is listening and wants to try these techniques, listen to your inner system. If a technique increases anxiety and agitation, then reduce the duration. Track your responses and take notes. Notes when you notice which technique helps you more on different points of symptoms. So what I need you to understand, and I hope my words come across okay, otherwise I'll try and do it again. TBI and chronic pain or feeling overwhelmed by the world because it seems so loud and it's so fast, this can help. Control isn't about everything that worked before because it was better, you think it was. Control is about working with your reality instead of living a fake reality and getting destroyed by it step by step. My pain is real, and my pain is here every single day. My brain still gets overwhelmed every single day. My emotions still feel dead sometimes, or spike when my system gets under or overloaded. I'm still tired, and I'm learning to catch these things before they cascade into a complete crash. I'm almost starting to squint. So when I feel my pain rise above that 7, I can breathe through it instead of fight against it. When I have sensory overloads or they start building up, I can step away and reset instead of pushing through until I break. When my focus scatters, what I talked about, I can use these specific breathing patterns to collect it instead of fighting the anxious and scary feeling I'm getting. So, this podcast isn't about positive thinking only or just positive thinking or pretending everything is fine, because it's about understanding that my breath can be my neurological medicine and your breath can be yours if you want to, with or without a TBI. Your breathing can help you. So when I control my breathing in a specific way, I'm directly influencing my pain processing, my cognitive functioning, and my emotional regulation stimulation overloads. So if you do it, you can maybe regulate yours. It is me teaching my brain new pathways around damaged areas. Teach yours new pathways around yours. And that's my neuroplasticity in action. So I still have days where the techniques don't work as well as I want them to. And there's days that my pain wins. And when I can't focus, I can't. So no matter what I try and no matter how emotional I get, it won't get the best of me. It is what it is in a positive way. Even on those days, I'm not just the old person. I'm not completely helpless. And you too have more control over what you think you have control over. Not over having, whatever conditioning you're dealing with, but over how you respond to it moment by moment. Your brain creates noisy neurological communication signals firing chaotically instead of organized patterns. Every brain does. You just don't notice it. TBI people notice it. These breathing techniques I just told you and shared with you act like a metronome for your brain, teaching it to fire in a balanced rhythmic way again. And I'm not going to tell you that breathwork cures brain injuries or eliminates chronic pain, because it doesn't. It doesn't, but it helps. And what I will tell you is that your breath is the one thing that's always accessible. No matter how bad the pain gets, no matter how overwhelmed the world feels, no matter how scattered your thoughts become, you can always return to your breath. Always. And if you're dealing with pain that affects your focus or focus problems that increase your pain, when emotional regulation issues make everything worse, then start here and do these techniques, even if it's just for 5 minutes each. Please, 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 please give yourself the permission to stop whenever your system tells you it's overloaded. Start slowly. Learn to work with your brain instead of focusing it to be something it is not. And most importantly, before I stop, understand that your systems might be more connected to each other than you realize. Because they were with me. Sometimes the solution isn't multiple treatments for multiple problems. Sometimes it's one specific tool that addresses your whole nervous system. Your brain is more capable, adaptable than you think, even when parts of it are damaged. Remember, left temporal lobe damage? Still doing this podcast. Every time you practice techniques that work with your nervous system instead of against it, you're literally teaching your brain new ways and new pathways to start to refunction or function again. You don't need to fix everything. You just need to learn to work with it. Your brain is still yours. Your capacity to adapt is stronger than you know. Look at me. Listen to what your body is showing you. Trust what your brain is telling you. Trust what it's telling you it needs. I'm going to stop here. Keep dancing in the rain like nobody's watching. Keep fighting the fight that nobody sees. I'll see you again. I promise. Till next time. Thank you for listening.